What's up, everybody? It's your host, Isaiah Bagnah of the Realest Realist podcast. Appreciate y'all for all being here. It's always a great time having everybody here and, enjoying the vibes that we all have. And yeah, since the last time we met, life has been awesome. It's been changed, a whole bunch, at least on my end. Um, I know, I assume maybe for Jake,
Oh
it's the
yeah.
same thing,
Yeah.
right? Heck yeah, man. Well, we'll get more into that detail. We'll get all into that as well. However, though, for this episode, we got a real treat for you guys, and this guest that we have today, it's honestly someone that I'm very excited to have on. I think what he has to offer is very beneficial to not only myself and Jake, but honestly, you guys too. It's going to be a great learning experience, and I think that there's a lot of great things that we will be able to take away from this episode. And so, without further ado, I want to introduce my man, Dr. Scott Woodward. I appreciate you, man, for being here, Scott. It's super cool. I just want to give a brief introduction to the people listening about who you are, essentially. So, you're Scott is a co-host for the podcast Church History Matters. He's a religion professor at BYU, and he teaches restoration scripture and world religions. So without further ado, man, welcome, Scott. Appreciate you being here, man. Real thing now.
Dude, Isaiah, tell him about why everyone on Discord was like to go get Scott. Tell him about the convo you and I had
Yeah,
and all
so
that.
Scott is Jake and I. So first of all, Jake and I, we tend to go down these rabbit holes sometimes, right? And
Yeah.
it's first of all very entertaining. But however, it's cool because the other day we were just talking about what was the initial conversation about? It was well, actually, it was about something completely different.
Different.
But
Yeah.
anyways, we got to a certain point where um we started talking about I think Joseph Smith or
Hmm.
and the restoration of the church and anything like that. And
hmm
I told Jake, I was like, hey man, uh Martin Harris is my fourth grandfather. Third grandfather, fourth,
Great, great,
great,
great.
great. So I'm a descendant of Martin Harris. And so anyways, it's just really cool that he's had such a huge impact in within the restoration of the church and
Yeah.
Book of Mormon, all he's had. So um I heard you were the man to ask all the questions. And really cool that I'm a descendant of him and stuff like that. I'm not like fully educated on him
hmm
and his impact that he's truly had and all the stories that he had. And I've heard that there's plenty of stories that revolve around
Yeah.
him and his impact. So
Yeah, man.
that's why it was cool to have you on because you're apparently are the man to learn from. So
Well,
yeah,
I don't know if
that's why.
I don't know if I'm the man, but I'm definitely a fan of Martin Harris, and so yeah, dude, honored to be on here with a descendant of Martin Harris. That's so cool.
Absolutely. Well, hey, appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
and
Man.
Jake told
So
me he's a descendant of Reynolds Cahoon. Is that right, Jake?
Yeah, that's
Did
I
you
was
correct.
about
guys?
to say,
And
Jake, yeah.
I'm almost confident those guys had to know.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, and Reynolds Cahoon was super cool. Like he's uh he's one of the guys that he was like in the stake presidency in Kirtland. He's in the stake presidency in Adirondack, Missouri. He helped build the Kirtland Temple that our church just bought last year. He helped build the Nauvoo Temple. Like he's a stud, man. Uh, is he as cool as Martin Harris? I don't know. That's debatable, bro. But he's a fantastic guy. So I'm honored, dude. I'm with like descendants of some of the who's who of early church history. This is awesome. Can you guys hear me?
So for me, I have a few questions for you. First one is, what is your general Harris and what he had, what role he had, restoration of the church, and honestly just overall sense.
All right, hold on a second, guys. I can't hear you for some reason, so hold on. Let me. Sounded like you just asked a good question. Hold on. I don't know what. Can you hear me?
Can you
I
hear us
can't hear
now?
you. Hold on. Dang it. Um,
We're gonna have to edit some of this too. I think.
Yeah,
Gonna
absolutely.
record and then edit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's okay. I have faith.
I have faith too. It's gonna work out.
I have faith, man.
Can you
Scott,
hear us, Scott?
no, I don't think he can. Can you hear us, Scott?
Yeah, it's because we're muted on this
oh,
phone.
there we go.
Oh,
Now
we're
I can
good.
hear you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay.
Okay, cool.
it says your
I'm so
phone
sorry.
is muted.
Yeah, I think it's so we don't have a feedback.
That's fair.
Yeah,
It's just so Jay can be on camera.
Oh, thank you.
yeah, we're cool.
Can you hear us, Scott?
Yeah, that's better.
Great.
We'll edit
There we
this
go.
up real nice.
We will edit this, man.
Kevin,
We'll
sorry
get
to make this hard for you, Kevin.
No worries. Um,
So
sorry.
you just asked something about Martin Harris, and then
I
like it
did.
like cut out. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell what you asked. So if you want
No
to try that
worries.
again.
No worries. So, my question for you is, what is your general understanding of Martin Harris and his impact slash role that he had or served within the restoration of the church?
Yeah, wow. That's a big question, man. He is so first of all, he's often known for like his mistake, for losing the 116 pages, the Book of Lehi manuscript. Everyone knows him for that. And he's so much more than that. He is he's so much more than the biggest mistake he ever made, right? I don't think any of us would want to be known for the biggest mistake we ever made. He does recover from that nicely, actually, and becomes one of the preeminent like witnesses of the Book of Mormon, and helps to finance the publication of the Book of Mormon single-handedly. Really
Mhm.
finances the publication of the Book of Mormon, and I mean, we wouldn't have it. We wouldn't have the Book of Mormon if it wasn't for him. At least not in the time that we had it. Like he was the only source of funding, and so we get that. We owe a great debt to him for the Book of Mormon itself, right? Being able to be printed. He sacrificed his farm, like 151 acres of his farm,
Wow.
and he also lost his marriage over this, like with his wife Lucy, and so. He sacrificed a ton to bring forth the Book of Mormon to us. The first 3,000 copies of the Book of Mormon. Actually, first 5,000 copies of the Book of Mormon that cost $3,000. So,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it begins for me. Is like, dude, I love the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon has changed my life. And if
Mhm.
it wasn't for Martin Harris, you know, things would have turned out differently there.
Dang. That's crazy. I feel like that's something that people don't really realize just how much he really did sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you said he lost his wife over this,
Yeah.
like his relationship, like
Yeah, 100%. In fact, can I
wow,
can I back up a little bit and tell a little bit about Lucy?
100%.
Yeah,
Love you
so
too.
Lucy's his wife, Lucy Harris, and she was pretty supportive at first of Joseph Smith. She thought it was super cool that he, found some plates. She even donated like 28 bucks to help Joseph out, and then she asked Joseph if she could just see the plates, if that'd be all right, and he said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't show them to anybody unless the Lord allows it." And at that point, she became pretty skeptical and pretty angry. And then she saw that her husband, Martin, was getting more and more interested in helping Joseph Smith out. And she started to suspect that Joseph was a fraud and that he was just in this to try to swindle her husband out of his money. So
Mm,
she starts to like oppose Joseph. She starts to like fight against him. And she starts to oppose her husband going and like, helping Joseph out. So they live up in Palmyra, New York. And Joseph is down in Harmony, Pennsylvania during the translation of most of the Book of Mormon. And she starts to resent the fact that her husband keeps going down there to help Joseph out. Like he's going to be the primary scribe for the book of Lehi, the 116 pages.
Mhm.
And she's pretty insistent that Martin like back off and stop helping this fraud out, you know? And so it was primarily actually to try to like satisfy his wife, to placate her and salvage some of their strained relationship, that he felt like he needed to insist that Joseph give him the 116 pages of the book of Lehi so that he can go and show his wife that this is not a fraud, it's legit. So that, I mean, that's the backstory. Is his wife's like kind of on his case, and their relationship's getting really strained. And so he takes the 116 pages from Harmony, Pennsylvania, up to Palmyra to show his wife and a couple other people. And it's during that time that that they get stolen, you know. And so his wife is kind of behind that whole thing. Then later, you know, and by the way, there's some suspicion that his wife Lucy maybe had something to do with the plot to steal the 116 pages, but we can't confirm that for sure. But later on, she like tries to press charges against Joseph Smith as a fraud, and she tells her husband that if he continues to help Joseph out, that he's going to be implicated as well as like an accessory to the crime of trying to fraud the people of New York or whatever. And so she like brings like a legit like case against Joseph Smith, and Martin Harris is called to testify against Joseph, but he doesn't. He like testifies for Joseph, and that further kind of ticks his wife off, and things just go from bad to worse. After he becomes one of the witnesses of the Book of Mormon, which was a super big deal. In fact, the reason that he goes down to ask Joseph Smith, and by the way, just imagine that you're Joseph Smith, okay, just for a second here. Imagine you're Joseph Smith. Martin Harris is the guy that lost 116 pages. You trusted him with like this super precious book of scripture. And the last time you saw him, like you guys left on really bad terms, right? Like Martin thought he lost his soul. Joseph thought he had destroyed the work of the restoration, and things were really bad. And they haven't talked to each other for like 8 months. And then, like 8 months later, out of the blue, Martin Harris comes and knocks on Joseph's door in Harmony, Pennsylvania. And Joseph's like, "What's up, Martin?" And Martin's like, "Hey, Joseph." He said, "I don't know how else to ask what I'm about to ask you, but my wife is bringing another case against you, like a legal case. And like, I believe you, Joseph. I really do that you have the plates, but I'm just wondering, like, could you show me the plates? Could I actually see him with my eyes?" Like the audacity of Martin Harris to ask Joseph to see the plates after he's lost 116 pages is like so
Right.
crazy to me. And Joseph, like, you know, to his credit, he says, "I don't know, Martin. Let me ask the Lord." And he asked the Lord, and that's how we get Doctrine and Covenants 5. Like DNC 5 is the Lord's answer to Martin. And it's crazy. The Lord doesn't say no. He says, "Actually, I have a plan to have witnesses of the Book of Mormon. And Martin, if you repent of your sins, and you've got a lot, then you can be one of the three witnesses of the Book of Mormon. I have a plan to show three witnesses by the power of God, the plates. And if you'll repent, you can be one of those." And so it's going to be about 3 months later that their experience happens up in Fayette, New York. They go into a grove of trees. Martin still hasn't fully repented. Dude, bless your ancestor's heart, Isaiah. He was a man full of, let's say, here's how Orson Pratt, one of his, you know, contemporaries, an apostle at the time, he said, "Martin Harris had a great many follies and imperfections like all other people." And the morning that they have their witness experience, Joseph Smith came to him and's like, "Hey, it's the Lord's will that we see the plates today, and you've got to repent, Martin. If you repent this day for a forgiveness of sins, you can have a witness that you seek, and you can see the plates with David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery." And so they go out into the grove together, right behind the Whitmer house, and they start praying, taking turns praying, and nothing's happening. Like no angel, no plates, until Martin Harris finally like raises his hand. He's like, "I'm the problem. I haven't fully repented." And so he gets up and leaves. And sure enough, as soon as he leaves, they kneel down to pray again, and boom, David and Oliver and Joseph have their witness with the angel of God. They see the plates, they hear the voice of God. So it turns out Martin really was the problem. Once they have their experience, Joseph goes and finds Martin, kneels down with them, they pray together, and then Martin has the same experience, sees the angel shows him the plates, hears the voice of God say that these plates were translated by the gift and power of God. And now he becomes one of like he's one of the special witnesses of the Book of Mormon. When he came back to the house, Joseph's mom said that he came in and he seemed almost overcome with joy. She said he testified boldly of what he'd just seen. And he said, "No tongue can express the joy of my heart and the greatness of the things that I just saw and heard." And shortly after that, their names get, appended to a testimony that is now part of every copy of the Book of Mormon in the world that's ever been printed. It's always been there from the very first printing, their witness of the Book of Mormon plates. And so his wife is kind of this antagonist behind it, and Martin's like that's kind of pushing him to like seek further and further witnesses. And sure enough, the Lord says, "All right, if you repent of your sins, you can be one of the special witnesses of the Book of Mormon." And that's kind of how it all gets kicked off for Martin, which is like, yeah, amazing. But then, okay, this is the part where their marriage like finally breaks. Then a couple months later, they're looking for printers to print the manuscript of the Book of Mormon now. The translation is done, and they got to print this thing. And Martin Harris is leading out in negotiations with various printers in the area, Rochester, New York, and Palmyra, and other places. And finally, they land a printer with E.B. Grandin, and he agrees to print 5,000 copies of the Book of Mormon for $3,000, which was like an inflated price in his day. He's kind of taking advantage a little bit here. I mean, today that's like $67,000 to print 5,000 copies, and Martin's like, "I'm good for it. Let's do it." And then as soon as he like kind of commits, he's like, "Shoot, what have I done?" He's like, "What have I done?" Like this is the very thing that his wife was worried about, right? That Martin was going to lose their money, lose their property, and they're going to become poor because of his stinking involvement with Joseph Smith. This
Yeah.
is exactly the scenario that she did not want to happen, and true enough, man. Like so, he mortgages 151 acres of his farm, and says that if this Book of Mormon copies don't sell, then the printer can go and collect the land and sell that off to cover the costs. And that strain on their marriage when it actually comes to pass that's true. Like he does end up actually needing to mortgage the farm. Like he actually loses all 151 acres to publish the Book of Mormon, and
Wow.
that's when his wife leaves him. They never get divorced officially, but she leaves him. A couple of years later, she dies, and then he's going to remarry in 1836. I don't know which wife you come through, if you come through Lucy or you come through Caroline Young, but yeah, he remarries in 1836, and so they don't divorce, but really his sacrifice to bring forth the Book of Mormon is going to cost him his farm, and it's going to cost him his marriage.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
That's what a sacrifice, and yeah, it's to even be in a position of like honestly like uncertainty. It seems based off what you just said. Like I mean, of course, obviously until he had that experience in the Grove and everything like that, but up to that point, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm literally taking my whole life, my wife, my 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 land, all these
hmm
things
yeah,
for this, which is
yeah,
obviously huge, right? But at the time, I can only imagine what kind of challenge that was for him.
yeah,
That, that's
100%.
wild. That is
Yeah, like he was
insane.
he was a wealthy farmer. He was like wealthy. He was respected. He's also going to lose his reputation because his involvement with Joseph Smith. So loses his reputation, loses a lot of his wealth, loses his marriage. Like, and then, but later on, he'll say like Joseph Smith repaid me in full for everything that I sacrificed. He's like I'm good. I'm paid in full. Whatever he meant by that, I don't know what he meant by that, but he wasn't resentful of the sacrifice he had to make. Like. So, I mean, he's all in, man. He's incredible.
Wow.
And what price do you put on being able to see the gold plates, see an angel,
Yeah.
hear the voice of God? I don't know. He probably felt like he's paid in full pretty soon, but I'm
Yeah,
sure there's a lot more stuff to follow as
Yeah.
well after that.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, speaking of that, do you know of anything like with that happened with him after the fact that the Book of Mormon obviously was published and everything like that? What ended up happening for like kind of the rest of his life, his journey?
Yeah. Yeah. So he stays with the church till 1837. So in 1837, we get the failure of a Kirtland bank. It was a project that Joseph sponsored to have a bank that would help the church make some money to pay off their debts for building the Kirtland Temple. And honestly, there's a recession in the United States, 1837. It's called the Panic of 1837. A ton of like 40% of all banks in the United States failed, including the Kirtland Bank, which shook the faith of a lot of people. Like, I don't know how you would feel if President Nelson said next General Conference, hey, brothers and sisters, we're excited to announce that we're going to have a church-sponsored bank, and we invite you to, invest in this bank and bank with us. And then we have like a nationwide recession, and the bank fails, and you lose your money. Over 200 people, 200 Latter-day Saints lost their money in that bank failure. And Martin Harris was not one of them. Joseph Smith asked him to invest his money in the bank, and Martin said, "No, I'm not doing it."
Said no. Huh?
Yeah, he's like, "No, this seems a little shaky." And sure enough, the bank fails, and Martin, just like a lot of people during that time, started losing their confidence in Joseph Smith because of his mismanagement of finances. And then the bank failed, but Joseph had invited church members to invest, and they thought, well, he's a prophet of God, so this is pretty safe, right? They had some assumptions that true prophets don't invite church members to invest in banks that fail, I guess. And it failed, and so a bunch of people started getting their faith rocked. But there was a deeper resentment too in Martin Harris. Despite everything he had sacrificed for this church to help bring it forth, he had never been given a major church calling. He felt like after sacrificing his reputation, sacrificing his marriage, and so much of his money to help bring the church forth, he deserved a position of prominent church leadership, like Oliver Cowdery or Sidney Rigdon, but he never had it. And so once his underlying resentment was fueled by this financial crisis in Kirtland, 1837, and when so many people were angry at Joseph, antagonistic against him, like Martin, he succumbed to that same spirit during that time, and so then he's out of the church in 1837. He gets excommunicated, we think. He always denies it. He's like, no, I wasn't excommunicated. He said, I never left the church left me. That's what he'll say. And and so he starts bouncing around to other churches that start getting formed. And he had one criteria to join a church. They had to believe in the Book of Mormon. If they didn't believe the Book of Mormon, then he wouldn't join it. And so some of the apostates in Kirtland formed their own church. They call it the Church of Christ. And at first they believed in the Book of Mormon, but after a while they start to renounce the Book of Mormon. And at that point, Martin says, you guys are idiots, basically. I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
But he says, that book is true. And he said, you're going to be damned if you reject it. That's what he says. Then he leaves that church and bounces around to a couple more. He'll eventually join, let's see, he joins a church. Have you heard of the Shakers, the Shaking Quakers? He joined them for a minute, and then he's like, they don't believe the Book of Mormon. So he says, that's not going to do. After Joseph dies in 1844, there's some breakoffs of our church, the LDS church, and we get James Strang. He claims to be the successor. So Martin Harris is like, I'll join that church because they believe the Book of Mormon. And he goes on a mission for them in England, and he just delighted in being able to bear testimony of the Book of Mormon that Joseph was a true prophet. Then he'll come home from that. He'll eventually leave that church because he didn't like how things were going. He helps a guy named William McClellan, who's one of the apostates of Kirtland, organize another church in Kirtland, and David Whitmer becomes the president of that church, but then he steps down. But Martin kind of stays with that church for the next 23 years. He'll stay mostly in Kirtland, Ohio, and he's kind of the self-proclaimed caretaker of the Kirtland Temple. He'll give tours to people and stuff and bear testimony of the Book of Mormon every chance he could get. After a while, Utah church members start to, go visit Martin Harris and ask him about his experiences. And they start to tell him, we would love to have you in Utah. All right, the pioneers have now gone across the plains. They're in Utah. And his wife, Caroline Young, that he remarried, she has a bunch of family members in Utah. So she says, Martin, I need to be with my family. I need to join the family. And he says, go ahead and go. Maybe I'll come after. I don't know. And so she leaves with their kids, and he stays back in Kirtland, and people keep visiting for a couple of years. and they basically persuade him to just come and visit. Just come visit Utah. You don't have to, you know, whatever. We'll pay your plane. Your not your plane. We'll pay your
Just say,
train
well,
ticket. Yeah, we'll pay your train ticket. And he says, well, as long as you'll pay a round trip ticket, then I'll come. I'm not staying.
yeah,
And because he has a little bit of a beef with Brigham Young. He's I don't know if I want to
sure.
go see Brigham. And when Brigham heard that he wanted to come, he's like, let's do a fundraiser for Martin Harris to get him here. Which, by the way, that tells you something. Like Martin Harris at this time, this is 1870. Martin Harris doesn't have enough money to buy a train ticket, man.
Mm,
Think about this wealthy farmer, all that he sacrificed, and now he's an old man in 1870. He doesn't have enough money to even buy a train ticket. So the Saints raise money. They bring him out to Utah. He reunites with his wife, his family. He reconciles with Brigham Young, and he gets rebaptized right there in Utah. And he goes to Smithfield to live with his wife there, and then he'll eventually move over to Clarkston, Utah, and that's where he dies. That's where he's buried today. And what's cool is once he comes back into the church, like all these people flood to come and hear one of the three witnesses of the Book of Mormon tell his experience. And there's just a stack of people who left their record of what Martin Harris said. If you want, we can walk through a couple of those things, which is they're so cool. But any questions so far about kind of what's happening to him? Does this make sense?
well, actually, no, it makes total sense, and I definitely do want to dive into those records if
Yeah.
you get a second. The but one question that came to mind, at least when you were just explaining that, kind of how. Well, actually, I have a couple questions.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
first question is that like, okay, so he now this might be a sensitive topic for some people. However, you said that he at the time went around to different religions and kind of
Hmm.
dabbled just with other just faiths, essentially, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, do you know what specific like religions he got into? Like, cause I
Hmm.
like actually me and Jake a little while ago were kind of on the topic of Freemasonry and how
Oh yeah.
Joe Smith had, part in that too within his lifetime and stuff like that. So, like basically if you can
Yeah.
expand on that, that'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to talk about Freemasonry or the other religions he joined or both?
Both? I mean,
Yeah.
shoot, both. Man. Yeah, yeah.
Let's just do both. Yeah, yeah. So his criteria was I have to join a church that believes in the Book of Mormon. Like that
Right.
was his line in the sand. So that's gonna disqualify most, churches in the
Mhm.
United States. So there's just a couple little branches, like breakoffs of the Joseph Smith Church that so Warren Parrish was one of the apostates in Kirtland that like kind of led to the bank failing and then
Right.
after that denounces Joseph as a fallen prophet and he starts his own little church and it's that church that he joins first because they believe the Book of Mormon until they don't and then he leaves them and then he goes to he tries the Shakers. That's a kind of a Christian group. And then he's like, "What am I doing? They don't believe the Book of Mormon." So he says that's not going to do. Then he joins another church, William E. McClellan's church, after he went to James Strang's church. And so James Strang was a branch of the Book of Mormon, like Joseph Smith. They call him the Strangites, or he called himself the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what James Strang called his church. So it gets a little confusing. And then the Church of Christ is the one that he kind of stays with for 23 years, which was another break off of the Joseph Smith Church. And so I don't know if that makes sense. So he's only going with restoration like branches. He
Sure.
won't just go to like a Baptist church. He's not going to just be a good Protestant because that just won't do because they don't believe the Book of Mormon. And he is a special witness of the Book of Mormon,
Right.
like deep in his bones, like uh, yeah, that's his uncompromising line in the sand. He believed Joseph was a true prophet, but he said in an interview in 1840, he said, "I think Joseph got arrogant. I think he became a fallen prophet. He no longer had the Spirit of God with him." Later
Mm.
on, he'll change that tune and he'll say, "He's a true prophet. He was always a true prophet." But Martin got caught up in the apostasy of Kirtland. As far as Freemasonry goes, that's really something that's going to become a big thing in the church in Nauvoo. And since Martin Harris does not gather with the saints in Nauvoo, he kind of misses that whole episode.
Mm.
But yeah, so Freemasonry is not a religion. It's a like a brotherhood. It's like a
Right.
fraternity. It's my best analogy is for anyone who's familiar with like the Boy Scouts of America. Boy Scouts is not a religion, but they promise to do their best, to do their duty to God and their country. Like they mention God, they want to be faithful to God. You just have to kind of believe in a God. Like that's basically the only requirement. Well, Masonry is like man scouts. It's like adult scouts. It's like the next level where they have like formal rituals and stuff. They have
Sure.
handshakes. They have like Boy Scouts will like raise their hands and
Yeah.
do like left-handed handshakes and stuff. Masonry is like the next level. It's like so it's a fraternity. It's like kind of like what Boy Scouts is for young men.
Mm.
They want to do like service in their community. They want to help men become better men and be honorable, that kind of thing. That's what Freemasons are. And so Joseph Smith is going to join Masonry in Nauvoo because he wanted to make some alliances. One of the reasons with people who are not members of our church.
Yeah.
And get some friends because they had just gotten kicked out of Missouri, the state of Missouri, like the governor like kicked them out of Missouri, put like an extermination order on their heads. And Joseph realized that if we're not making friends with people who are not Latter-day Saints, then people are going to always be suspicious of us. They're going to believe all the rumors they're hearing. And we got
Mm.
to help people know who we really are. So let's join fraternities. Let's get embedded in places where we can have friends and people can know who we really are. And we're all about, being honorable and good and helping our community. So let's join this. Hiram Smith, his brother, was already a Mason, and so that probably helped. So that's kind of where that all kind of booms is in Nauvoo. And meanwhile, Martin Harris is still back in Kirtland. He's not participating in any of that. So
Mm.
he misses that whole episode.
Interesting. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate you answering that. Yeah, because it's. I mean, it's a very relative topic. I feel, especially in that time, and in well, with those individuals, I feel. But that's cool. That's cool to have a little more backstory of what religions he took part of, and stuff
hmm
like that, and just his journey. His
Yeah.
journey. So no, that's really cool. And so actually, my second question is: you mentioned that he kind of had a little bit of beef with Brigham,
Yeah.
a little bit of a tense relationship. What was that from? What's the basis behind that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little unclear, but I think he kind of resented that Brigham Young just continued like steady and strong with Joseph Smith. And never wavered. Brigham was one of the few who never wavered and was always true. And he had opposed the Kirtland apostasy. He had told the people in the Kirtland Temple, they started holding secret meetings in the Kirtland Temple to overthrow Joseph Smith. And they made a stupid mistake. They invited Brigham Young to one of their anti-Joseph Smith meetings. Never invite Brigham Young to one of your anti-Joseph Smith meetings.
Sure.
In that meeting, like Brigham calls them all out and says, like, he said, you can rail and slander Joseph all you want, but you cannot destroy the appointment of a prophet of God. Cut the threads that bind yourself to the prophet of God and sink yourselves to hell. I mean, this is Brigham. This is just like,
Oh yeah.
and people are ready in the Kirtland Temple to throw down right there. People wanted. Someone said to Brigham, like, "I want to teach you the true meaning of the laying on of hands, Brigham." And Brigham's like, "Lay him on, brother!" Like they almost throw down, literally, like in the Kirtland Temple. So in the spirit of that is happening, and so Brigham's just like staunch, like defender of Joseph, and so people who had a beef with Joseph started. To have a beef with Joseph is to have a beef with Brigham now because he was that guy. And so now, so I don't know of any particular story where Martin and Brigham had like a direct conflict or a run-in, but I suspect it's kind of the spirit of that. And so he's like, I don't want to talk to Brigham, I don't want to, whatever. And then Brigham's like, come on, we want you to come to Utah. We want you to visit. We'd love to see you. And then once he gets there, he reconciles. So you guys
Yeah.
aren't so bad. And I like being here with my family. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Scott, was
cool.
it? I got quite. I'm gonna interrupt you.
No, go ahead,
Sorry, man.
bro. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Was it Martin Harris or Oliver Cowdery who tried to like do the Seer Stone swap?
Yeah,
Was
that
it
was Martin. That was
Was
Martin.
it?
Yeah.
Tell us
Yeah.
about that story. I only know there was like, I don't know, like 2% of that story probably.
Yeah. So now we're rewinding all the way back to.
I know. Sorry, it's not
No, that's all right.
chronological.
No, that's good. No, that's cool. Yeah. So Martin tells this story years later. He says that when he was helping Joseph translate the Book of Mormon as his scribe, like Martin was acting as scribe, there were a lot of people that were like pretty skeptical. I mean, we've already mentioned his wife Lucy is a skeptic, and other people are, kind of dissing on Martin because he's involved with this guy who's, shady guy, he's claiming plates and angels and stuff. And are you sure you want to be associated with him? And so after some heavy translation, a couple hours of translation, Martin says they got up to go take a break and go skip some rocks in the river, kind of relax for a minute. And apparently Joseph was using one of his seer stones, a dark colored stone, to translate during this time period. That's what Martin says. And so Martin got a rock when they were out skipping rocks that kind of looked like the seer stone. And when Joseph wasn't looking, he swaps the dark rock for the actual seer stone just to see what Joseph would do. And so Joseph begins to start to translate, or he tried, and he's like, Martin, he said, what have you done? He said, all is black as Egypt in here, man. I can't see a thing. What did you do? And Martin apologized. He's like, Joseph, I'm just trying to shut the mouths of fools, people who say that you're just memorizing all this or you're just pretending. I just wanted to swap them out so I could tell people that you're the real deal, Whether that's the full truth or whether Martin still had some skepticism himself, like I don't know, but that was one of his many efforts to try to prove that Joseph's a true prophet and not what other people were saying that he was.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Funny story.
It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is kind of cool.
yeah. And by the way, Martin's the guy that came up with the plan with Joseph Smith. So why don't you just translate some or put some of the characters from the plates on a piece of paper, and I'll take those back east to like linguists and see if they can like translate and they can help authenticate that you're getting it right. And again, this is another plan to use scholarly means or secular means to try to prove that Joseph's legit rather than a fraud. And so, I mean, Martin's he's no dummy. He's trying to use all the means around him to verify. He's not just this gullible guy. Sometimes, critics like to say that Martin's just this gullible guy. He's just, bouncing around from religion to religion and he doesn't, have any anchor, but that's not true. He was skeptical. He used logic and reason and all the tools of secularism that there were to try to, back up what Joseph is doing and try to figure it out. And he's not just bouncing around from religion to religion. He had an anchor. It was the Book of Mormon. That's what mattered to him after he had his witness. Like nothing could shake him from that. And even though he's out of the church for over 30 years, he is 1,000% true to his testimony of the Book of Mormon. Like he delighted to bear testimony of the Book of Mormon any chance he could get. If someone would listen to him, he'd bear his testimony of the Book of Mormon. And people who heard it said it was just incredibly powerful, like shook him. Sometimes it moved him to tears. Like this guy was an incredible witness, independent of his affiliation with Joseph Smith or the church or anything like that. Which, I mean, personally, I think that actually makes his witness more powerful because he had no skin in the game. He wasn't, if think about this, like if Joseph Smith pretended to translate this book and pretended to have plates and pretended that an angel was all part of this, then Martin Harris has to be part of the conspiracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery. The three that say that they saw the plates and saw the angel and heard the voice of God, like they're in on it. They are in on this conspiracy, right? They're in on the fraud. And so I don't know what they would have thought they had, to gain from that. But we know that especially once all three of them are out of the church for a while, Martin comes back and Oliver comes back. David Whitmer never does. But while they're out of the church, like that was the perfect chance. And they're all mad at Joseph. They're all not happy with him. And they all had a chance to like pull the rug out from under Joseph and bring this whole thing crashing down. Because of anyone on earth, they know whether Joseph's telling the truth about the Book of Mormon or not. They're in on the fraud or they're part of like a legit divine thing. And it's amazing to me that all three of them continue to testify, even outside the church, even grumbling against Joseph Smith. When people confront him about the Book of Mormon, they say, like, tell us the truth about that now, since you're out of the church. What really happened? And all three of them continue to say, that part's actually true. We actually saw the angel. We actually saw the plates. We actually heard the voice of God. Well, why aren't you with Joseph still then? They would say, well, because we think he was a fallen prophet. We think he went astray. We think that the bank failure is evidence of that. That kind of stuff. But it's incredible to me that they continue to testify to their dying day that is 100% true, what they testified they saw. So powerful, dude.
Very
It's powerful.
For real. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So, with that being said, you did mention that Martin left some statements or something
Yeah.
of what did you say?
Just
Something?
testimonies of other people who heard him
Testimonies, huh?
testify of it, or records from other people.
Right, records. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Think
You
can
want to
speak
talk
on
about some of those?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah. These are so fun. So now he's in Utah. He goes to Clarkston, and people start to ask about his experience. One time he walks into a barber shop, and he comes to get a little shave, a little trim, and the barber asks him to sit down. And Martin's super old at this point, and the barber's a skeptic. He says, "So you're the old gentleman who once said that you'd seen the gold plates from which the Book of Mormon was translated, aren't you?" He said, "I guess now that you're old and wiser, you don't go around telling people that you saw an angel or gold plates anymore, right?" Martin's 92 years old.
Wow.
He reaches over and grabs the barber and like pulls him in front of him, looks at him with both eyes, eye to eye. He's like grabbing his lapels, and he says to him, "Young man, as long as you live, I want you to remember what I now say to you. I did see the angel. I did handle the gold plates. I did hear the voice of God." So awesome. I love
That's
that.
sick. That's sick. Standing on business.
That's a cool story. Even his 90s, standing on
Seriously.
business.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right. This 92-year-old man, like another one, this girl, Elizabeth Godfrey, said that she watched this group of 6 boys on the side of the street as Martin Harris is like walking down the street. And as he's passing the boys, one of them has the courage to like shout out like, "Hey, Martin, did you actually see the plates?" And Martin says, "Boys, do you see that chopping block on the side of the road?" And they said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, just as plain as you see that chopping block, I saw the plates. And sooner than I would deny it, I'd lay my head on that chopping block and let you chop it off." He said. Another group asked him the same question, and he holds up his hand. And he's like, "Do you see my hand?" Like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you see it? Are your eyes playing a trick or something? No? Well, just as surely as you see my hand, so surely did I see the angel and the plates." Because people would ask him a lot, like, "Are you sure like it wasn't like just like a vision? Are you sure it wasn't just like maybe your eyes were playing a trick or something like that?" And so he would his go-to move, it's like signature like Martin Harris. He would like find something in the room and he'd be like, "You see that right there? Or you see that apple tree over there? Or you see the sun in the sky? Do you see me standing here right now? Well, just as surely as you see me standing here, just as surely as you see that tree, I saw the angel and I saw the plates." One time when he's really sick at this point, he's old, he's partially, paralyzed, he's weak and feeble. This guy named George Godfrey, his job was to go and sit with Martin during the night and to care for him. And George Godfrey, I don't know if he was bored or what, but he asked Martin, did you really see the plates? Did you really see the angel? Like, are you sure there wasn't some sort of trickery going on or something? Martin opens his eyes and he goes, "Do you see that axe over by the fireplace?" "Just as surely as you see that axe, I saw the angel and the plates." One time, his bishop came to visit him. He was about to die. He told his bishop, he said, "Bishop, I'm going. I'm going." Meaning I'm going to die soon. This is July 5th, 1875. The bishop grabbed his hand. He said, "I felt his pulse beating very, very slowly and sluggishly." But he said, "Martin, I have some good news for you. You might want to hear. The Book of Mormon is about to be published in the Spanish language." And the bishop says, as he was holding his hand, he felt Martin's pulse quicken. And he kind of sat up and was energized. And he started talking about the Book of Mormon, like energetically. The bishop said, just talking about the Book of Mormon, like brought life back to this man. I mean, just so many of these really, really cool stories. On his deathbed, he's like laying there, and this guy named William Pilkington, this kid that was kind of in charge of watching over him, Martin could barely even talk, and a tear was streaming down his face, and William came over to him and said, "Martin, are you okay? And do you want me to leave?" And Martin shook his head. "Don't leave." William said a little prayer in his heart, and he had this idea. He said, "Martin, do you want me to hold your right hand up so you can bear testimony of the Book of Mormon?" And Martin nodded. And William, so he holds his right hand up to like the square like this, And he says, when I held his right hand up to the square, Martin gained the power of speech again. And he bore his testimony of the Book of Mormon. One more time, he said, "I went into the woods with Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer, and I beheld an angel descend from heaven in a dazzling light of glory. He stood about 2 feet off the ground. I saw the gold plates. I saw him turn the leaves one by one in the plates. I heard the voice of God in the dazzling light declare that the Book of Mormon was translated correctly. I was commanded by God's voice to testify to all the world what I had seen and heard." And then William drops his hand down again, and Martin kind of goes feeble again. It's like just so many of these like amazing stories of Martin. I don't know. So let me keep going. I have a couple more.
I'm all
man.
yours,
This is
dude.
amazing. Do not stop.
Yeah, I'm saying,
Yeah, okay.
I'm interested, man. I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Another guy asks him. He's like, "Are you sure it wasn't a fraud? Are you sure you couldn't have been tricked? Are you sure, Martin?" And Martin, trying to get some strength as an old man, he says, "The Book of Mormon is no fake. I know what I know. I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. I have seen the plates of the Book of Mormon. The angel appeared to me and others and testified to the truthfulness of the record. These things are true." He also told the story, this is a little bit earlier, but he said that some of his buddies back in Kirtland before he came to Utah got him drunk. They took him out for some drinking. This is back when the word of wisdom was just the word of wisdom, okay? And they thought, we're going to get him kind of loosened up, then we're going to pop the question and just see, what we can get him to say. So they got him nice and loose. And then one of them just asked kind of casually, like, "So Martin, do you really believe the Book of Mormon's true?" And Martin says, sets down his glass. And he's like, "Do I believe it? No." And they were all like, "Oh, shoot. You guys just heard it." And he's like, "I don't believe it. I absolutely know it's true." And kind of staggering. He's like, "I know it. My belief has turned into knowledge." Anyway,
That's so cool.
Okay, one more. His deathbed. Okay, his deathbed moment, like the couple of moments before he dies. It's July 10th. He dies, 92 years old. Several people are in the room with him, and this guy named William Homer tells the story. He said Martin had been sleeping, and then he woke up and he asked for a drink of water. So William put his arm underneath Martin and he gently raises him up so he could drink while someone else pressed the glass to his lips. As soon as he was done drinking, he looked up at William and he said, "I know you. You're my friend." And then he said, totally unprovoked, he said, "Yes, I did see the plates on which the Book of Mormon was written. I did see the angel. I did hear the voice of God. And I do know that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, holding the keys of the holy priesthood. He then relaxed back onto his pillow, let go of William's hand, took 2 or 3 more breaths, and then he was gone.
Wow.
Just as the
That's
sun was
powerful, dude.
setting, just as the sun was setting over the mountains, like Martin Harris drew his last breath. And when he's buried there, you can still go visit his grave. It's in the Clarkston Cemetery in Utah, just kind of by Logan. And when they buried him with the Book of Mormon in his right hand and the Doctrine and Covenant, no, the Bible in his left hand. He's kind of crossing his hands, and they laid him there. And so to this day, Martin Harris's body, at least, is still holding a copy of the Book of Mormon with the
Wow.
Bible.
Oh, how incredible.
Okay, I mean, I've not missed Sunday school too often in my life. I have not heard 80% of these stories. This is incredible. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
I've honestly never heard any of these. I mean, a couple of them, but like, this is crazy, man. This is wild. It's actually kind of cool too, because so actually, my birthday's not July 10th, but it's July 17th, and
Okay.
like actually, quite a few people in my family is like around that time, like from July 5th, July 10th. Actually, I think my aunt is July 10th, or my older cousin. And so, anyways, it's kind of just cool that, like, that he. What year did he pass? You know,
1875.
1875, huh? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow, it's crazy, man, and it's just up there by Logan, huh?
Yep. Yeah, a little like suburb of Logan. It's called Clarkston. Yeah.
Wow.
Road trip.
Well, I was gonna say I'm for sure
Worth
gonna have
visiting.
to
Worth visiting.
go
100%.
check
Yeah.
that out. That's crazy, man.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
we got a church expert here, church history expert here. Can I throw you like a crazy unrelated question?
Fire away.
Okay, so we know the plates eventually Angel Moroni takes him with him, right? When they're done with the
Yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Does he also take all the other artifacts Joseph found that Moroni had buried in the Hill Cumorah, like the sword of Laban, the Urim and Thummim? Do we know, did he take all of those with him? Or was there anything, the seer stones, all that, did that all go together? Or was it just the plates?
Yeah, we assume he took everything except for seer stone. Joseph Smith still had a seer stone, and that gets passed down from generation to generation, and ends up today in the church archives. You can Google the Joseph Smith papers. Was able to take really high quality pictures of it. The first presidency let them do that, so we still have a seer stone. But sword of Laban. We have no evidence Joseph Smith ever had the sword of Laban.
Oh, okay.
But the 3 witnesses got to see it. So in that experience, David Whitmer and Martin Harris both say that there was like a table by the angel. He was holding like the plates of the Book of Mormon, but on the table was the Urim and Thummim, the Liahona that Lehi had, the sword of Laban, the brass plates that we read about at the beginning of the Book of Mormon that Nephi goes back to Jerusalem for were there, and some other artifacts from the Book of Mormon. And so he showed them those artifacts, but the main event was the plates in his hand.
Absolutely.
But I think those artifacts are pretty cool, right? Because there's kind of like a subculture of some church members who kind of are starting to believe that the Book of Mormon is kind of like maybe like religious fiction, where it's like it's got true principles from God, but was there ever actually like a civilization called the Nephites and Lamanites, and did they really happen in time and space? Is that legit? Do we have
Yeah.
to believe, But I think what's so cool about the artifacts, like, is that, I mean, that kind of answers that question, doesn't it? It's like, here's the actual Liahona. Here's the actual sword of Laban. Here's the brass plates. Here's the actual record that Mormon abridged. Like, these are artifacts from like a true civilization. And by the way, that angel himself is a pretty cool artifact. He's a resurrected being from that time period. This is Moroni, right? We believe. It's kind of funny. None of the witnesses actually say his name was Moroni. We just all assumed that it was the angel Moroni because he's the one that's been guiding Joseph Smith during this time. But so he sees an angel, presumably Moroni, and anyway, I think that kind of puts to bed the idea that this is just religious fiction,
Absolutely.
inspired, but religious fiction. It's like, no, you don't get artifacts like that, So all of this is to say, like, that this is an actual legit record from a actual civilization that existed, and it's coming back to bless our lives in the latter days, man. you know.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thanks for answering that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
seriously.
100%.
Um, I have a question for you too.
Yeah,
So,
fire.
I guess it kind of we are going back a little bit in time, back to the Martin Harris thing
Yeah.
story, and when those pages were stolen, what are
Uh-huh.
your thoughts on that? Like, who probably took it? How that happened? You know,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Dude, there's so little like evidence. So there's like theories, of course, right? There's like speculation. Some people think that Martin Harris's wife was involved, like I said. Other people think there were some neighbors that stole it. Um, Doctrine and Covenants 10 is pretty cool, pretty insightful because once they get to the end of translating the Book of Mormon, Joseph asked the Lord, like, should we go back and retranslate the Book of Lehi that we lost? And Doctrine and Covenants 10 is the answer. The Lord says, nope, don't do it. Because those who stole the pages are waiting for you to do exactly that thing. And they have altered the text of the book of Lehi, and they're waiting for you to try to retranslate it. And then they're going to compare them side by side and say that you're a fraud. And so don't do that. So right there, we get a little bit of an insight like some people stole it. They're trying to prove Joseph's a fraud, waiting for him to retranslate the same record. And I mean, that's like the most concrete information we have after they're stolen about what happened. And so, yeah, like we just know so little. If you want some more theories, there's a cool book called The Last 116 Pages by our friend Don Bradley. And he's
Oh
gone
yeah.
into some interesting, some theories and like what the evidence is for each of those theories in that book, which you can go have some fun in there. But yeah, we honestly, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Fair
Because,
enough.
And motive isn't evidence, right? Motive is not evidence, but
Right.
Lucy kind of has a motive if she's skeptical and wants Joseph. She's putting out court cases and things, right?
yeah,
She's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
little bit of a motive, doesn't
She's got
prove
motive.
anything, but
Yeah.
yeah.
She's definitely on the suspects list. Yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
fair. Man, that's wild. Crazy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I always thought about like, dang, that's so unfortunate. But obviously, everything happens for a reason. But like, I just was wondering what your thoughts would be around that. Because I mean, shoot, I have my own conspiracy theories about it.
Yeah.
What type of people actually took it.
Hmm.
What their well, obviously it says their intention in the script
Hmm.
you just said, but
Hmm.
um, just the specifics of it, the details of it. So it's cool to hear your perspective on it because yeah, me and
Yeah.
Jake
You,
kind of go
you
down
got
that
you got a
whole
theory that
rabbit.
you got a theory you want to share, Isaiah? I'm interested in your theory.
Well,
Buckle up.
this is so yeah, honestly, like I did think that Lucy had something to do with it, of course,
Hmm.
but I think it's more than just like Lucy. I think because Lucy was so honestly like got to a point where she was just so in distress about the situation, like it, and when people get in that type of emotion, I believe in like um I want to say frustration and honestly maybe even discouraged. Like at that point, people will take some drastic measures, especially
Hmm.
to prove themselves wrong or to fix something, especially if it comes down to their livelihood, right? And
Hmm.
back in that day, there's a different way of living, truthfully, than what we have now. There's different morals, there's different, all types of things, right? And so in that
Hmm.
regard, I think that this is my understanding, if my conspiracy theory,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that there's a chance that she didn't fully know who she was dealing with, but she did give information for these people to come in and take well those 160 pages, right,
Hmm.
and use them. And but I think these people are like satanic people, like very very evil individuals.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
she didn't fully comprehend that or understood that because she was just so blinded by her emotions and
Hmm.
how she felt on the matter, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But like, I mean, it kind of fits into what most people are saying, but you know,
Mm.
that's
So
basically
so so
my
maybe
understanding.
she didn't steal them, but she gave those who did access. Maybe she kind of helped them out,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. I mean, like
yeah.
especially when it comes to the court aspect, like she swears that I ain't steal them, I ain't do nothing, or like if it was to come up, or something like that, she
Mhm.
technically isn't lying, right?
She's not lying. Yeah, it's true.
But I mean, hey, you never
Yeah.
know,
Hey,
right?
that's as good a theory as any right there.
Right. It's pretty general. It's not crazy, but
Yeah.
I think it's kind of valid, man.
Yeah.
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 That's cool. Dude, Scott, thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming on and like
Seriously.
taking the time. This is typically normally like a football podcast with some,
Yeah.
with some little
stuck
rabbit
within
holes, or we'll talk about
Yeah.
professional development, goals, investing, like all different kinds of just random stuff. But this is the first time we've done this. And so just thank you. I want to thank you for coming on and doing that.
Yeah, seriously,
Dude, heck
man.
yeah, man. And like I just want to say, Isaiah, like your ancestor, he is divisive. He is divisive, like in a really good way, man. Like he's either an incredibly convincing imposter, or he himself is one of the greatest evidences for the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. Like, there's no middle ground, man. There's no middle ground with him. So super fun to come on here and talk with you guys about him. And gosh, yeah, he's one of the key players. So
That's appreciate you, man. Seriously, this was super cool for me. Very insightful for me. I think honestly, this means a lot. This is probably my favorite episode we've had so
Yeah.
far.
wow.
So, thank you, Scott. That was awesome, man. Make sure to go check out his podcast,
Church history matters.
Church History Matters, and it's on what platforms, just to make sure.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the places. So
Great.
yeah, we'd love to have you come on over and listen. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for your time, Scott. Well, I'll let you get going. I know you probably got stuff you want to do, but you got to
Yeah,
get gun done. But thanks for coming on, bro. Appreciate you.
100%. Thanks, guys.